Turns out if you really want bipartisanship in Washington, what you need first is tripartisanship, because in our third story tonight, Republicans unable to agree with themselves over minor things like the president's prerogatives for naming Supreme Court justices. Literally, one Republican moving from malleability to code words for a nomination knife fight. With Justice David Souter's retirement from the bench, the president getting an earlier than expected opportunity to choose a new justice on Friday, Republican Senator Orrin Hatch, who sits on the Judiciary Committee, through which the nominees must pass, explained that the Republican role is not to apply a political litmus test to Mr. Obama's nominee.
I do not expect him to appoint a conservative to the court. As long as he appoints people who are really qualified and who will abide by the rule of judging, I think it's going to be pretty tough to vote against him.
Now, unfortunately for Mr. Obama, he did not name his nominee on Friday night, because by Sunday, Senator Hatch was instead warning Mr. Obama not to nominate anybody too, what's the word, human.
If he's saying that he wants to pick people who will take sides, he's also said that a judge has to be a person of empathy. What does that mean? Usually that's a code word for an activist judge.
Unfortunately, an activist judge is a code word for pro-choice, which many judges are, like the majority that ruled on Roe v. Wade. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell now also warning that Mr. Obama will have a fight on his hands over this empathetic, activist, pro-choice judge who's way too liberal despite not yet existing. McConnell also saying Obama can pick who he wants, and also issuing another warning, this one against sympathy, which is usually a code word for sympathy.
The president is free to nominate whomever he likes, but picking judges based upon his or her perceived sympathy for certain groups or individuals undermines the faith Americans have in our judicial system.
And if a fictional judicial nominee, too sympathetic, empathetic, activist, pro-choice, and out of touch with mainstream America, can trigger partisan bickering, no surprise that fictional fiction can, too. Former Bush advisor Karl Rove last night spinning the tale that Mr. Obama has created, quote, this myth of attempted bipartisanship. Rove admitting in the course of the same conversation that, quote, the atmosphere in Washington, D.C. is too poisonous and has been for the last 16 years, and then, without explaining how President Clinton might be to blame for that, denied that either he or his boss, President Bush, might be either. Joining us now, Margaret Carlson, political columnist for Bloomberg News and Washington editor of The Week magazine. Margaret, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
Well, we wondered last week how the Republicans would play the Supreme Court, nice or lethal. Apparently, everybody who chose was wrong. It was nice, then lethal. What happened here?
Just in case the president nominates somebody that they do approve of or that is moderate, they've decided to have the fight now against a mythical candidate that they can, imply all kinds of traits and be against. Because the worst thing that would happen is if they can't have a fight.
And presumably, if they did get that fictionally, uniformly loved candidate, they could claim they caused Obama to choose him
yes.
by pummeling him in advance on all the other possible
yes.
candidates.
They can take credit for eliminating all empathetic and sympathetic possible judges from the list and getting an unempathetic and unsympathetic person.
What is the point, though, of the Republicans conceding the Obama constitutional prerogative on nominees and then announcing they already have a problem with the nominee before the nominee exists?
Well, they have to concede the constitutional prerogative. I mean, they don't have much choice about that. But this may be all they get. Their airtime could be limited if this is a smooth nomination and approval. So, Senator Hatch gets to be on the talk shows, and I mean, as you know, and some people disapprove of this, you need a little friction for the Sunday talk shows. So suddenly, from Friday to Sunday, Senator Hatch discovers that he really didn't mean what he said on Friday, and in fact, he's going to be very upset about this nominee.
Both Senators Hatch and McConnell suggested that empathy and sympathy somehow conflict with impartiality, and you can't take sides as a judge, even though that's basically your job is to choose two sides. Yeah. You can't judge a case fairly if you feel at all for the people involved. Have they just explained an awful lot about the condition of the Republican Party?
Well, and also if you're human, as if the only possible nominee would be Bo the dog. The sympathy and empathy have suddenly become very bad words, and the litmus test, the fake litmus test is if you have sympathy towards any group, you're automatically disqualified by the Republicans. Now, within the Republican Party, you cannot have any sympathy except towards their approved groups, which are, the NRA and, Sarah Palin people, Rush Limbaugh listeners, and the Christian right. Now, if you have sympathy for another identifiable group, you are automatically eliminated from the list of nominees that will be approved by Republicans.
To this thing in California with Karl Rove and David Plouffe, this debate about bipartisanship. If you're Karl Rove, as practiced as he might be at this, does there not come a point at which you really have to stifle breaking up in laughter as you pitch this idea that apparently first President Clinton and then congressional Democrats manufactured partisan rancor when it's the congressional Republicans who at the very same moment are up in arms over a judicial nominee who doesn't exist yet?
Well, that exchange was so fierce. I found it very surprising. I think Karl Rove must be really rattled by President Obama because Republicans have not mounted an opposition. In fact, I think that the Republican that's going to break out of the pact is going to be one that finds a way to work with Obama on some issue, because the party of no isn't getting any traction. And, I was thinking at the end of the 100 days, what if the Republicans had to do a speech at the end of their 100 days and explain what they've been doing? It would have been very sad for them because they haven't done anything. They don't know what to do except not do what Obama's doing. And who would their spokesman be? Would it be Rush Limbaugh? Would it be Sarah Palin, who's busy settling scores with Levi Johnson's family? Would it be Newt Gingrich, the ghost of majorities past? Any of the Republicans on the Hill, Mitch McConnell, John Boehner? None of them has emerged as somebody that can pull together a group of Republicans working towards something that looks appealing. They met at a pizza parlor over the weekend, and they had the event, but they really still didn't have an agenda, except that there was free pizza with pepperoni.
Maybe that's it. Also,
yeah.
they had a tea party, and the Mad Hatter was there, and Jim Bunning hit Mitch McConnell with a pitch. Margaret Carlson of Bloomberg News and The Week magazine. Great thanks as always, Margaret.
Thanks, Keith.